Welcome back to Three Punches. Last week, hey Max,
Hi.
You're here. We talked about the combat games, the combats. Just to keep all of the folks at home abreast, to get your opinions on them real quickly. I'm going to throw Mortal Kombat, mainline Mortal Kombat game titles at you, and you give like a brief one-sentence review.
Okay.
So everyone knows where you stand.
All right,
okay?
got it. I'm ready.
All right. Mortal Kombat 1, go.
One of the most influential games of all time. I don't want to play it.
That's right.
Yeah,
your opinion is correct. Mortal Kombat 2, go now, right now.
Mortal Kombat 1, but way better. One of the best games ever.
Mortal Kombat 3.
What?
Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3.
That's the one. Yeah. Oh, hell yeah.
That's the main title. That's what it's called the first time.
Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero accounts.
Oh, God. There's so many conflicting opinions. I love to hate it, and I hate to love it.
Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance.
Shredder Sub-Zero?
No, incorrect,
Is that
sir.
incorrect? Oh, God. All the PS2 era like games bleed in together for me. They don't have any identity for me.
They sure do.
Next.
Okay. The acceptable answer would be Quan Chi neck stretch fatality.
That's the one. Okay.
That's the one.
It's got like that cobras in it.
Yeah.
No, still incorrect.
God, next.
We should get Kenny on here. You know. Mortal Kombat Deception, the second one.
Conquest mode is what I immediately think of. I think that one has a conquest mode, and it's like, the basis for big fighting game, epic Shenmue style story modes. But that's okay. I don't really want to play it. No, thank you. I don't want to play the game very much.
Mortal Kombat Armageddon.
Everyone is here, and the fatalities are ass.
Everyone is
here.
Mortal Kombat 9.
One of the most influential fighting games ever, and is still fun to this day, and I suck at it.
Mortal Kombat 10 X.
Actually, one of the greatest fighting games of all time, period, with the best guest cast. Goddamn, we're just spend the next 30 minutes talking about that.
We did. We've spent 30 minutes talking about those guest characters in a couple of episodes. Mortal Kombat 11.
Probably the best looking fighting game of all time on a raw graphical standpoint. But brings the gameplay to something that I'm not a huge fan with, but it's fine because Mortal Kombat's really hasn't been that since MK2.
And it doesn't count, but MK versus DC. Anyway, moving on. You don't even have to answer that.
You missed the most important Mortal Kombat.
I missed Mortal Kombat 4.
Mortal Kombat 4 is the most important one.
We just skipped MK4. You know what?
I didn't mean to. I said that. I was like, MK4, I'm fine with it. But when I think back on it, I said this last week that I'm like, it just doesn't have any visual identity to me. It just I'm like, what does that look like again?
It looks
like the endings though.
The endings
the
are
Looney
amazing.
Tunes. The Looney Tunes. Pick out the weapon from your pocket is still the greatest thing ever.
MK4 holds a very special memory for me because I was like kind of unfamiliar with the game when Kenny and Steve were showing it to me, and then they did the sector fatality where you shoot a missile with sector and then do the fatality input after, and then the fatality animation will kick in, but the missile shows up and smacks the opponent, and the fatality animation is destroyed, and it's the funniest thing I think I've ever seen in a fighting game.
Like you did a fatality to the fatality. You just destroyed its chances of even looking somewhat presentable. I didn't actually mean to skip MK4. I just in my head I was just going too fast, but that happens. I've been called way too fast by a lot of people. Anyway, today I believe we are talking about bosses. Raging against bosses. Max, Justin, have you ever fought bosses in fighting games?
I never made it to them. I never made it to bosses.
I mean, Justin, don't do that. Yeah, specifically, like us two, we specifically don't do that. We can move on. So, what's the next topic?
I'm literally going to sit back because it's like you guys have probably combined fought more and some of the hardest fighting game bosses of all time. I've done a few, but not nearly. So just starting it off, when we start with Justin, in your head, who is the hardest boss that you've ever fought against? Like, you have to personally have had experience against them.
All right, so there's two answers to this, right? The first boss, it's kind of like not real, but I'm gonna just say Galactus mod SNK style and using my team
that was tough.
Is the hardest thing. It took me like 6 hours to beat him. At one point, I really wanted to give up on life because of how hard it was. But on a real boss level, I would say the General.
Yes.
From Kaiser Knuckle. Just because, I remember this day because I had I caught COVID in September.
Oh no!
I was stuck. Yeah, I had no symptoms though, but I was just stuck in a hotel room for like 14 days. So I'm like, all right, I guess I should make some content. I can't stream. I can't play on live.
General with COVID.
Your symptoms get worse.
Whatever doesn't kill me makes me stronger.
So I'm just like, you know what? Let me play. You know, I watch High Score Girl, and even the show talked about how hard this boss is.
It's true, they did.
I need to see more of that show. They actually have reference to the General in that show.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
Dude, they go so deep in that show.
You're gonna make a YouTube series video about it, Max, if you watch this. I'm telling you.
I did see the one where it's like, what does Raiden say when he goes, like all that kind of stuff. Like, I was like, this is insanely referential.
Yeah. But yeah, the General had me just like on the ground for at least like 4 to 5 hours. And it was just insane how safe, strong, OP, combos, damage, everything. He had it all. And yeah, I would say those two are like the top ones on my list.
So for anyone that wants to know, Justin has a video of him attempting the General. I watched it again. I watched it the first time. I watched it again. 65 attempts. And after 65, you did beat him. I'm not sure if it was like a few more attempts after that, but it was around 65 and around 30 attempts for you to get one round.
Yeah,
off.
It was bad.
But getting progress on some of those fights can be very daunting, where it's just like, let me just see something change. Like, give me an opportunity to see what I need to do, you know?
So like 2 or 3 years ago, I tell Max, like, you should fight the General. And he's like, okay, sure. I'm not sure if you knew anything about him.
Knew nothing.
But you're like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do like an impromptu boss rage. Cool, let's do that. And then after like, I don't know, a half hour, Max is like, yeah, this is fun. And then after that half hour, I see him just like glowering. He's like, this is not fun. I'm not having fun with this boss. And I thought you were like real angry with me. It's like, you cursed me with this because I'm not sure if I can beat this because after a certain point, the General just makes it seem like there's nothing here.
Yeah.
It's just an AI that's just outperforming you. Like, there isn't a strategy you can really find. And I think there is, but it's just exploits, really, right?
Well, that's the big gimmick of the classic fighting game bosses that Justin kind of is familiar with as well. They all have something that you eventually have to find that they fall prey to. And it's usually not like it's usually something very unceremonial, like ceremonious. Like, you just sweep them when they wake up. You just jump kick them in the head. Like, it's the most like basic thing ever. And for some reason, they just don't counteract it. I can't remember what the hell it was for the General, because I don't even think we did the General in the hardest difficulty. Technically, we just did it on like the default difficulty, and it was still insane.
It's fine. Yeah, it's fine the way the difficulty it's on.
The funniest thing, and I've heard from a lot of people, and I'm kind of curious because I'm getting close to resurrecting a boss fight with Rugal, because Omega Rugal wasn't what we were all hoping it would be, and revisiting the older ones,
yes,
and actually turning the old SNK dip switches to the hardest difficulty. I've heard a lot of people tell me that regardless of the difficulty, the boss is always difficult, and it's always like the same difficulty. So I'm like,
oh, really?
I need to put that to the test and see how crazy it actually gets, because that is absolutely the case for a lot of Capcom games. Old school Capcom games are like, it makes the ladder easier, but then the boss is just always fucking hard.
Aside from that, like when you said jump kicking, when you say jump kicking, the first thing I think of is pretty much every classic Mortal Kombat boss from Mortal Kombat 1 to 3. It's just jump kicking generally seems like a good tactic. It's maybe not the best one, but Mortaro, I first fought Mortaro when like, you know, MK3 was new. And I remember like it was in a comic book store, and the comic book like store owner was just jump kick that horse, man. Just jump kick him. That's all you need to do. And I don't remember if I beat him. I don't think I did, but growing up, there was like, for me personally, there was like Mortal Kombat bosses. And I know this might seem weird, especially for Justin, who beat this boss pretty easily not too long ago. But the end boss at TMNT Tournament Fighters, Karai.
Yeah.
That boss is a nightmare when you're like 12. Nowadays, it's not actually that hard. Back in the day, though, I did find out that you can just lock that boss down with projectile spam. They just go and block the entire time. And if you try to not be cheesy, then they just kind of destroy you pretty easily. But as a kid, I would just do that because I really want to see my Ninja Turtle endings. I was like, oh, do they get the pizza? Do they save Splinter? I need to know. So any character that had a projectile was able to win. But other than that, I would get bodied by Karai quite a lot in my formative years. So
yeah, when I fought that character, I was picking the shark, and everyone says in the meta that he's like the best character in the game.
He's really good.
Yeah, he's really, really good. Like, he's just really obnoxious. And, you know, like, and if Nerd Josh played Combo Breaker last year, and he just destroyed the whole competition with just doing one move with the shark, and just it's literally just a flash kick. And the flash kick is like perfect anti-air, and it has the Honda coming down like sumo like butt drop, so it's like a 2-hit anti-air, and you just keep repeating it over and over, like a shark coming like from going into the ocean and jumping from the ocean, breaching, and
like
you just keep doing that. Yeah, you just keep doing that, and you literally beat the whole game. And I was like, oh man, I'm pretty sure this boss is hard, because everyone's telling me it's hard. If I pick like maybe like a turtle, like a Leo or a Michelangelo, right? Like a Shoto version, it'll probably be a lot harder.
Yeah.
Michelangelo, not too much, because Michelangelo also has like a flash kick / DP, because it's a charge motion, but it acts more like a DP. And it's like his Rising Thunder attack that like is 1,000,000 hits, like 3 or 4 hits. That's 1,000,000 for that game. And it just causes so much damage, causes a lot of stun. So you could do it with Michelangelo, not probably Leo. Leo's not great.
We're talking about the SNES version of the game, right?
Yeah.
This is the one that I also, I saw the last boss recently when Shredder was announced for Nicktoons Brawl, and I was like, so what's Shredder's history in fighting games? And it was like, oh yeah, let me go check out to see how crazy Shredder is, because he's like a Bison, not Bison in the TMNT fighting game. But he's just got like, he doesn't have anything specifically flashy. He's just got like insane buttons and priority and like great hitboxes on everything. So when I got to the last boss, boss didn't even get to do anything. Chat's like, get ready, Max is gonna get his ass slammed, here we go. And it was just like, I just jumped in and just kicked her. And that's like the thing I was saying, like sometimes it can be very unceremonious of like sometimes like the old AI will just fall prey to shit, you know.
I mean, it's a lot of experience that you've gotten from doing boss rages and knowing how they work nowadays versus like back in the day.
Yeah, and what you said was a great point, because it brought me to like the fundamental things like, does this work, right? There's like even things in basic fighting games against people where it's like most fighting games will have these things and you can just sort of run the gamut, like tick throws or empty jump lows or stuff like that. In CPU boss fights, even on the hardest difficulty, it's the same thing where it's like, how effective are sweeps? What does the opponent do on a wake up? How do they treat a situation where you literally leave the stick in neutral? And what do they do? And then the big one is, what happens when there's block stun? When you throw a fireball and the block is presented, does the AI try to get out of it, or do they just hold back? And a lot of the time they hold back, and you can just literally sonic boom or Hadouken them till they die from chip damage. And I'm like. And then I run into this situation where I'm like, this makes a shitty video. So, and I'm like, I know this is it. I can get some damage this way, but I have to beat him like with honor type of shit.
Oh my God. You know, when you're talking about like that, like boss rages and making videos and making honor, I'm like the complete opposite.
Yeah, you are.
I'm actually time overing most of these bosses. And the comments of these people,
you take that.
The comments of these people are like, you coward, like all this whole entire time. But the thing is, it's crazy. Is like, so there's one boss fight that you reminded me of. I fought Art of Fighting 2 Young Geese, right? And legit, like, we both had like a pixel of health left on the first round, and it's like 5 seconds left on the clock, and I'm in the back. I finally got back to the corner. I'm like, oh my, I'm dead. And he just stands there, and I'm like staring with him, and I'm like, please God, do not approach. And he literally timed himself over.
Yep.
And I just stood there, and I was like, oh my God. But it was so intense because like I guess because of the moment and also the health bar, it makes it like, even though that was an exploit that didn't mean to happen, it just happened. But it was a very intensive moment there.
So that was an old SNK game, right?
Yeah, Art of Fighting 2.
Art of Fighting 2. Okay, I didn't hear what you said. That was what I mentioned when you leave the stick in neutral, see what happens.
Yeah.
Because for me, in several moments, there has been times in the KOF legacies where I just sit there and not do anything, and we just stare each other the fuck down. And I'm like, really? Is this the AI is literally waiting just so I can punish anything, or it can just punish anything I do. Like that's all it's relying on is just my input to make me feel bad.
But that's what a boss would do. It's what an evil, like, a guy at the end of a fighting game tournament, he's like, what? Press a button.
Do anything.
See what happens. Fuck around. Mac, out of all the boss rages I've seen, the one that I feel like those are the most arduous, I don't remember its rating, was just doing Tekken 7.
Yes.
And fighting, like, I think it was Kazuya, Devil Kazuya.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he was the final boss. But it seemed like you guys were there for like 12 hours just on him.
Yeah, it was that fight I remember being specifically difficult just because the boss is so juiced, and then there's multiple things after that, like after Kazuya, like Shin Akuma shows up, right? And he's just raining air fireballs, and you're just this little Tekken dude trying to figure out like what to do. The cool part is that we could feel like there's progress, right? We're making some things are getting solved. It's just, my God, dude, you make any single mistake and you've lost 60% of your health from a fireball or something like that. I actually really like that boss fight. I think that's one of the best aspects of Tekken 7 and its really cool scenario boss setups. But no, I completely agree with you. Yeah, that fight was arduous, man. And we tried to get it done in one night with like no information, no knowledge. Granted, that's a big part of it, is that to set up for drama, like I'm going to tell all of why boss rages became somewhat popular like a decade ago, is to set up for maximum drama, right? Go in almost unknowing to absolutely anything, figure it out on the way there, and then, let the solutions present themselves in an organic way. And a lot of that stuff would lead to story moments, right? You can actually have like story arcs per episode, like the really high highs at the start, and then the really low lows right before the end, and the triumphant finish, right before the end. So that's like,
that makes sense.
The literal story arc of every single one. So Tekken 7 was perfect for that, man. Like what a fantastic game to boss rage because of how epic those fights were.
And just like it's like a legacy franchise. We know all these characters, and it's like the newest one. So there's a lot of like hype already in there. But when Justin said Galactus, modded Galactus, and the General, is that like, do you agree with those for yourself, or do you feel like there was one that was like above that?
I feel like now it's been figured out, right? It's hard to look at these things with perspective, like once you know the answers, and everyone has the answers, and you just do it. But no, dude, Tekken 7 I think definitely holds a pretty good candle for me, a pretty bright candle in my boss rage series, and nice. It was genuinely a hard fight, like on day one when nobody had any information. Later on, we see people like perfect it, and absolutely destroy those bosses. But figuring out how to come to a conclusion and beat them, that one took a hell of a long time. But I do think Justin's right, man. That Galactus mod, I fought the same one he did, and they've later polished it, if not made it harder. And it's even better than before. But that Galactus mod was something else. Like, I think I was on that for like 4 to 5 hours before I caved and picked Virgil. And I was just like, I was not planning on being here for multiple days, man. I want to see it just die. And then I'm like, this is going to be a hilarious part of the video where I cave and pick the character that I absolutely hate. So I'm going to do it. And then he died. And it was like, you know what? I feel like shit, but I'm glad I don't have to come back to this. But yeah, Galactus was definitely a difficult one.
But like in terms of
when you went to the dark side, that was like some Star Wars right there. Like, join me, Luke.
Yeah.
But like in terms of their power level, you have Galactus down here, and above that, you have Melania, Blade of Mikola, right above that.
It's up there somewhere. I think the General's special though, right? The General is probably the most infamous, most difficult boss of all of them. I haven't even done technically a boss rage on it because we were, I think it went up on video games, like it wasn't super edited, because I wasn't really prepared. We didn't put it on the hardest difficulty. Number one,
oh my God.
It was not put on the hardest difficulty, so it technically did not count as a quote unquote boss rage, even though there was a boss and there was a bunch of raging happening.
Technicalities.
Yeah, that's the gimmick. Boss is on the hardest difficulty, but General special.
Justin, did you? I don't remember. Did you have it on the default difficulty for the General? Did you?
I actually don't remember if I did or not. But even if it was, I want to say I didn't tamper with the settings, but even then, like it was still like almost impossible to get a read. Like my strategy at this point was like, okay, I found the exploit. He doesn't block him. He doesn't block meteors, right? So if you hit him on his wake up, he just gets hit. So now the point is, how do I get this hit? And my answer was, I gotta get lucky. There was literally no area where I'm like, all right, he does this to make me punish him. I really had to like throw a random, like whiff a button and then input DP. So he could try to whiff punish my button, but he gets hit by the DP instead. That was like my strategy for most of the time. And then most of the time it actually didn't work. But when I got those games though, I was like, oh my God, yes, let's go.
I have to sympathize with Justin in these situations, because when we're tackling these bosses, you get these like these people in the chat that try to like come in and like backseat you on what to do, and it's like they're like, stop jumping, just play footsies with them. I'm like,
just play
what? What's that the answer?
It's a computer. It's not a human. Like people like it shows like how many people are just acclimated to 1v1 human fighting in fighting games.
Yeah.
Like, no. I'm gonna keep jumping because the jump results in 35 to 40% health loss for them, and sometimes they just won't DP me because of a random element. Like the RNG just didn't kick in. You just have to hope that happens.
See, RNG is just this magic, right? It's if you're fighting a 1v1 with a human, it's fine. It doesn't matter. It's but when this gets applied to a boss, it's like, how is this boss getting in my head?
Yes.
How this boss is actually playing with me?
It's not even RNG at that point. It's literally just like the computer's like, well, I mean, this is my game. You press a button, I know what you're gonna be pressing.
You're in my
I was born in it. I was born in the RNG.
It was crazy. I think the best part about this was I really thought that I was gonna beat the General easily, because I remember like I didn't see any playthroughs at the game. The only thing I saw was the high score girl clip, and I was like remembering.
Wow.
I'm like I was remembering like it don't seem that hard. I mean, I think I could do this pretty easy, but we'll see. And then it was definitely an experience for sure.
I'm glad you gave this context that you've sequestered yourself in a hotel room for like upwards of 2 weeks, and you've just been fighting the General like 80% of the time. You're stuck in a hotel.
It's funny because during that hotel room, because like I said, I couldn't play Fight Kit online, so I just started like going through arcade playthroughs left and right, and then another one that was driving me insane was King of Fighters 95. Bro, King of Fighters 95 had me tilted as well. Saisu and Rugal, they were pissing me off so much.
Yeah, that game I recently went through with the KOF Legacy. I like 95 a lot, man. That was a fun game.
It was fun, but the bosses, I was like, I didn't even know what to do. So you know how sometimes when you get like the before the main boss fight Rugal, you fight like Saisu, and even Saisu was giving me the work. Like he just like every time I press a button, DP came out, lost 35%. I'm like, bro, it's impossible.
It's funny you mentioned Rugal, because it leads me back to this thought that I've even had with the guys while streaming, of like how it's kind of difficult for even modern fighting games to make like a big mainline boss that has impact or like matters. And emulating what was the classics, like the Shao Kahns or the Bisons, right, of like the 90s and stuff, it's kind of difficult now, because I think most of Mortal Kombat, whatever they try to do with Shinnok or Chronica or something, doesn't really hit in the same ways that things like Shao Kahn did, or even technically Shang Tsung.
they do it with more presentation. Like they're trying to make it seem harder due to the presentation of it versus it actually being hard unless you put it on like a max difficulty before a casual playthrough. Like most people aren't doing that. So I guess it's like when if a Metroid Dread comes out and like half the discourse is that like I couldn't play that game because the bosses are too hard. I think for fighting games, like fighting game companies, they're really, really scared of getting those types of reviews. Like I couldn't beat the game because it was too hard. I mean, that's why there's easy modes. Like Metroid didn't even have a difficulty slider back then, Metroid Dread, until it did later. Did
people really complain that much about Metroid Dread's bosses?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Like that was,
It
was like, you know, the Dark Souls like discourse of like, or Souls just in general, that so there's lots of people that just can't do this and blah, blah, blah. Like it went for Metroid as well. I saw several reviews that were like negatives. These bosses are too hard.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not, you know, I'm well below like both of your guys' skill levels in general in video games, let's just say. But Metroid's, it's like, I just kept at it because it was so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I beat the game. Yeah, it took me like 15 tries against the final Chozo guy, Ravenclaw.
Yeah.
But I was having fun the entire time. And when I did it, it was like super good. But I haven't seen that discourse around fighting game bosses on their default difficulties or anything. Like, I don't know, since Mortal Kombat 9, I want to say, because I remember people saying Shao Kahn was a bit overpowered because the Shao Kahn in Mortal Kombat 9 is like a boss Shao Kahn that can do shit that he normally can't.
And that's I think is an important thing that even a lot of fighting games haven't done lately. Omega Rugal's an exception because they did give him some juice right outside of his regular version. He does combos and stuff that he can't like normally do. But I really like that when games specifically like retailor a character and really give them stats and abilities and moves that you wouldn't normally see that essentially like break the game, right? Which is fine. You're a boss, right? The idea is to overcome that stuff. And the gimmick of the actual legacy gimmick of fighting game bosses is that they've always been cheating. Right, the AI in fighting games back in the day has always been cheating for your money because that's just built into the arcade culture of fighting games.
It is
so
true.
I want to see more stuff kind of like that. Just like get me a crazy, juiced, evil-looking version of Kyo or something like that, and he's just an absolute ballistic asshole, and you go fight him.
We just need Among Shadows to work on King of Fighters 15 mod, and then make a Rugal just like insane because like. I would say, you know, like back in the day, like you said, like the bosses were like so much harder. Now it's like modern fighting games are pretty easy for the most part. Like, I mean, I think like you were saying about like Rugal has like different stats for the boss rush. And then Street Fighter 4 Seth actually arcade mode had the better stats as well too. He had more health and you know he did more damage, but that was about it. But in terms of like a difficulty level where it's like it's making you like having to overcome, it's much easier to overcome modern fighting game bosses compared to back in the day. I guess they want to make things a lot easier. And you know, like I said, I was very disappointed with King of Fighters 15 Omega Rugal just because of what I remember as a kid. He gave me a lot of nightmares. It was very tough. It was super challenging, super fun, even making recent YouTube videos about him. So I was really expecting, like super expecting like old school SNK style because even the name, like people when people think about like, oh, what are the hard fighting game bosses? They're like, oh, play SNK fighting game. Yeah. Right. That was like the little thing that people always say. And then I would say now it's like, it's really not even there.
Keep it on the SNK thing. Someone's a boss we haven't, well, Justin mentioned him a bit, but I just find this funny. I think Max was doing a legacy for, I want to say Terry, when Terry was coming to Smash.
Yeah.
And you're playing Wild Ambition, the 3D SNK game.
That geese fight, man.
You scream out, why is this geese the hardest one of all? And like you're a bunch of attempts in, like at least 5 or 6 attempts in, and he shows you a super that you've never seen before. It's like this quadruple like Reppuken, and it has like this super flash. You're like, how does he have other stuff?
Yeah, it's like the game somehow was keeping stuff secret, like an hour deep into the playthrough, and I'm like, what? This is insane. Yeah, I feel like there's like some hidden gems there in games that a lot of people would just not really play, like weird 3D KOFs and stuff like that. But what Justin's saying is like absolutely right, and I think I talked about it not even that long ago in a video. It's like with modern fighting game design, right? Especially even with modern game design in general, where things are designed in a way that like have answers, right? Things are designed to have specific weaknesses, and then you counter those weaknesses with this, type of shit. Like fighting games are very well designed in comparison to older fighting games like nowadays, just a completely subjective level. So why would you create a boss that doesn't abide to like modern fighting game design elements? Like, would you? I don't think that any fighting game dev, or at least the big ones like SNK, Bamco, Capcom, anything like that, I don't think that they would torture people in the same way as they would with older bosses anymore, with a modern game design philosophy. And that's for a really specific reason. Why did they do it in the past?
Because it made you put
give
more
me quarters.
Yeah, it was because of the money. Because those bosses were there specifically to make the machine money. So
that's true.
Because if there's not a second player, let's say, just in case there is not a second player, and both you're pumping quarters in to play competitively, the machine needs to make money if that dynamic is not there, either because the game is dying out, whatever it is. So yeah, let's make another player by making a boss that's stupid cheap, or it has pumped up stats. When I fought Gil for the first time, actually not even before I fought him, I read an EGM back in the day. It's like, this boss gets all his life back, and I was like, what? Like they didn't give like the detail of what that actually entails, and you can knock him out of it. But playing Street Fighter 3 New Generation for the first time, and I did remember getting a Gil and just never beat like him in an arcade setting. It was only when I got like Street Fighter 3 Third Strike on PS2 or the Anniversary Collection where I finally got to sit down and like that's. But like I think Gil in Third Strike was like less intense than Gil in New Generation. I think that version was like his hardest form. Maybe I'm not sure about that.
I think New Gen was definitely a bit more challenging. I can't really remember. It's been a long time.
It was a bit more challenging because the parry system was still kind of jank compared to Third Strike. Because like even if you parry, you don't really get like punishes compared to like Third Strike. But Third Strike Gil was, I think, also pretty hard, but definitely not New Generation hard. I would say Second Impact's definitely the easiest Gil out of all.
Really?
But when it comes down to it, Gil actually falls down to the same problem if you just play him. If you hit him with a jump in and you do another jump in, he just keeps getting hit by the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. I think Gil's a good example boss though, right? I don't love Gil and like his overall like Illuminati god two-tone horse shit, but what does he do in terms of like boss fights that throws like a wrench into the mix that's weird and different? The bitch comes back to life.
Yeah, that's the one.
The dude literally summons like you're playing Street Fighter and this bitch summons meteors and you're like, oh wow. Well, and then he has a full screen like aura super. Like
that's what I was gonna say. Wings of Seraphim. I'm more scared of that. Like especially back in the day.
My man got the name down.
If I see that his bar is full and like the round's not even I'll shit my pants. I don't want to play this.
Yeah. I think
it is.
That makes Gil like honestly like especially Third Strike Gil a really cool boss that he just does these things that naturally gives him an aura of like absolute fear about him. He's got full bar. Oh God. Okay, just gotta wait. Play patiently, and he starts rushing you down. You're like, oh Jesus.
What is your guys' feelings on bosses that are playable like from the start? Like MK4 is a good example. Shinnok's just there. Shinnok is unlockable in MKX, but in MK4 he was just there. Like I was going to say Shang Tsung, but Shang Tsung not really because he was added as a playable character in games where he wasn't a boss. But like, are you against that? Do you feel bosses should like keep a mystique and you cannot select them, or do you think it's good? Well, we have a finished character; it's content to play as. So where do you lie on that?
I like when the bosses are like unlockable, or like secrets. Kind of like I think the best boss that can really show that is probably like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo with Akuma. I love that he was a secret, and the fact that like you have to get like specific requirements and then you fight him. But the thing is, you probably wouldn't know that he was selectable unless you did a code. So I thought like that was like the coolest way of like, you know, keeping a secret, keeping it kind of like intense. Because at first, like if you don't fight Akuma, you know, you're able to pick Bison, and Bison's the boss of the game. Nothing really changes in terms of like stats or whatever, besides computers just has naturally increased damage during the arcade run. But yeah, Akuma coming out, I thought that was pretty cool.
And yeah, I think you have to do something unique with it, right? I understand completely, like dev time, fighting games are expensive, right? Characters are expensive to make. You can't just have a boss and then they're just locked to that only most of the time. So I get it why like Shao Kahn or Darkseid or like a lot of MK bosses especially end up being characters in the main roster and stuff, or Goro, you know, stuff like that. But I definitely feel that fighting game bosses just can't be a roster member, right? If you end up running into them and they are a boss character, you have to make that unique in some way. The boss needs to surprise the player. And whether or not that's with unique abilities that they couldn't do before. This is why, once again, I think Tekken 7's great. Because Tekken 7's bosses in the end isn't just like Kazuya. No, it's like this crazy devil-ass Kazuya. And it isn't just Akuma. No, it's Shin Akuma. And he throws like 6 fucking fireballs now and all this shit. And it is not just the fact that they're doing a lot of damage. The boss is doing new and surprising and crazy things. And if you just use the foundation of your regular character, which is kind of what they did in Tekken 7, regular characters, and then they have these juiced up versions of bosses that actually, they do have new assets, they have new animations. I think that's awesome. Like that is literally like how you do it type of stuff. Even to give it more props, Killer Instinct did that with the Shadow Jago. Like Shadow Jago got some, you know, nutty stuff when he was first just a boss fight that you had to find and get to him. And then it was just like, oh, let's see what this version of Jago does. Because that's all it was just a shadow of Jago. And yeah, he had all these unique, absolutely ballistic moves. Like, look how cool this shit is. That's what I want. I want to be blown away by how cool this shit is that this boss can actually pull off.
Sorry, I would say, and also like certain bosses don't really fit with the game's like playstyle.
No.
So for example, like Mortal Kombat 3, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 with Shao Kahn. Shao Kahn doesn't do what everybody else does in terms of like run combos or like, you know, like kind of pretty much combos. Shao Kahn just like shoulder charges you, bashes you, puts you in the stagger stance that you're like, oh, I'm negative on block because I keep flying back. And then, yes, he really has no combo. He's just one hit boot kick to the chest, like on some 300. This is Sparta kick, sends you full screen. And he doesn't have like any moves that you can actually play the game against, like, you know, like a computer or have an arcade playthrough or play against friends. I would say the only version that you could play Shao Kahn is kind of like the Genesis version, the 16-bit, where you put like the combat codes and you could pick him or Motaro. But besides that, he's not pickable in arcades or competitive play at all, from what I know.
Yeah, I was sticking with Mortal Kombat. I was still really impressed that they kept Chronica never playable.
Yeah.
I was like, I always thought they kind of would do a version of that. And when I mentioned when I mentioned Shinnok in MKX, I forgot that you in competitive play, can you be corrupted Shinnok, or is that was a boss only thing?
No, corrupted Shinnok was the big bone Shinnok was specifically for just the boss fight, right?
See, that's cool, right?
And this is once again like why are NRS games so popular? People love them. It's like, well, they get it. They've been doing the things that have provided success for them since like the 90s, and they are still executing on those like theories to this day, right? Where they have boss fights in there that's just where that boss fight is, and it's a crazy OP version of a character that, you know, does unique stuff, and you get to be blown away by it. He has his own like X-rays and his own like fatalities, I think, and stuff like that.
I'm always disappointed cool, where Aaron Black shoots with his X-ray and his bullet doesn't say corrupted Shinnok. I was like, there's not enough room on the bullet, I guess. There's two fighting games that like disappointed me so much for bosses, and one is another Mortal Kombat. That would be Deadly Alliance. They have the lame ass sub boss Moloch, who's just like a troll. That's it.
Oh god, I forgot about this character. Yeah,
everyone did.
I don't even know who this character is.
You missed nothing. And the actual final boss is either Quan Chi or Shang Tsung, you know, two members of the main cast that you can select at any time. And I'm like, I know it's called Deadly Alliance. I know that's the story reason for it. But, you know, you think the more powered up version of them. And that's why I think they went so hard in MK Deception, where they're like, it's the Dragon King, some guy you never heard of, and he's just here now, and he's the final boss. And then they went even harder, where they're like, now it's Blaze. He's now this like giant fire giant from Elden Ring, and they went really hard there, and I appreciated that because I remember being so disappointed when I booted up Deadly Alliance. And the other one, we're finally talking about it. Everyone in the comments, Weapon Lord. In Max's eyes, he's just bulged. In Weapon Lord, the main boss Zarek is just there. He's just selectable, and you'd think they'd have like some big, huge demon that's like, you know, the size of like Onslaught or whatever. Like, you know, God bless you, James Goddard, but like you really needed an actual uncontrollable final boss there, because I always felt that was lame when I was a kid playing Weapon Lord, just going, this is the best fighting game ever. And just there's nothing to look forward to at the end, because you've seen this character before. You played as him.
They just play like an AI version, right?
Yeah, they don't that in Weapon Lord he plays the exact same. He doesn't get anything crazy, but I think that is the way to go for modern fighting games. Like, yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into these characters, but at least make the AI controlled version like a special version that does shit that normal players can't. I think that's the best balance.
And it's not like that's impossible. Like, and we keep talking about like this all boils down to like single player content, where having unique bosses just like is a nice little spicy thing at the end of a fighting game. And then you have like essentially system direction is what the devs have, where they're just able to pick and choose what makes this boss crazy and just give them certain things and unlock certain limitations on the regular game. I think it would be insanely cool where it was like make your own boss fight. Or just like make a version of a character and just unlock certain abilities. And there's like tiers of how busted things are and how crazy you want to get. Like character has unblockable fireballs. Well, that's like a really high tier because that's going to be hard to deal with. Like it'd be fun if you could create within certain limitations, obviously just making them broken, but fighting game bosses that you can share with others online or something like that.
So you want system direction for bosses?
Yes, 100%. System direction
so good.
Just for AI.
Yeah,
I think that's a really good idea.
They had something like that. I mean, because they already have that for like for Tekken games and Soul Calibur games, right? Where you could fight your ghost, right, online type of thing. Like player's ghost. I forgot what game that did that. Like
Killer
you could
Instinct.
upload like Killer Instinct. Okay, that you could play against like ghosts and everything. And I thought that was really unique, right? That was super sick.
Yeah.
So if you were able to do a boss version, I think that would be. I mean, a lot of people would try to upload. I mean, Guilty Gear kind of sort of did it with Combo Maker, right? With that whole Combo Maker system, but it would be kind of cool for like a like, you know, you fight like the mom mode, Guilty Gear Sign, but then you upload an online version. Like, okay, this is my version of like Boss Rage Soul, Boss Rage Nago, Boss Rage Eno. Yeah. That's good. I think that's a great idea for sure.
So what you're saying is you want Fighter Maker from the PS2 to come back.
Well,
boss edition.
Let's not go that far, but in a way, in a more controlled, less janky way, absolutely.
No, a less controlled, more janky way is any other bosses like that we haven't mentioned yet that you just like. It doesn't necessarily have to be the hardest or anything, but anything unique out there.
I wanted to bring up, like, what do you guys think about like fighting games that have bosses like different version of bosses? Like I would say Neo Geo Battle Coliseum. There's four bosses, 4 boss fights. Like, do you guys like that where there's different bosses, or would you like just like one main badass boss?
Oh, so you mean like the 4 Kings type stuff in Street Fighter?
Yeah.
I think it's great. Really. Yeah, I think it's rare that any games nowadays do that, but it happened there was at least a sub boss. You know, there are at least 1 or 2, and it would depend on whether the game is made in Japan or made in America or whatever. Like Mortal Kombat's always had a sub boss. Like most Midway games had some type of sub boss. Like even War Gods has one, you know? So I think it's pretty cool, but sometimes I've seen games go too far with it where it's like, Bloodstorm has like 6 or 7 other bosses before the awful final boss. So I think it's easy to get a little carried away, but I mean, that's not really a concern modern wise, but I would appreciate it if there was a sub boss and a final boss, like just to mix it up a little bit. Cause nowadays it's just always like a final boss or a special version like the Shinakuma or Devil Kazuya, like Matt mentioned.
It's always like usually 2 to 4 bosses, but like Neo Geo Battle Coliseum didn't really have a 4 kings. It was kind of more of like, all right, you do a playthrough, and then depending on the results of your arcade playthrough, because it's all based off time, like on how many fights you accomplish, will determine which boss you fight.
Yeah.
So that one was pretty unique because all 4 bosses come from like obviously different SNK game franchises. What you have like Neo Dio, who else? King Lion. Who's that guy that looked like Castlevania dude, white hair? One of those guys. And then it was one of those guys, and then another one was King of Fighters 97 Orochi's, but his name was not Orochi, it was like Mizuhara or something.
Oh yeah.
Mizuguchi. Yeah. Those 4 bosses were super sick. I actually love the fact that you were able to like kind of choose for which boss you kind of want to fight based off like the progress of the game, and they were all like really difficult, and I kind of like that. It was kind of like a 4-in-1 type of thing.
There needs to be like a ramp up, right? That's the thing that sub bosses allow. It's that you have to think of like, what does a sub boss represent in a fighting game arcade ladder? It represents you're not good enough to fight the big bad guy, you little baby. Like that's their presence. Like, you got to get through me to do this, and it leads and builds right to the eventually. So if this guy's hard, what the hell's at the end, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I really like it when it doesn't happen too often, but like Mortal Kombat 1 did it, where it's like Goro was the champion. Shang Tsung is not in the tournament.
No.
You know what I mean? But like, since you beat Goro, he's like, okay, it's me then, I guess. Like, I'm the very last line of defense. So I mean, I think, I'm sure people can correct me, but it's like Goro was the harder fight of the 2. Maybe I'm assuming that because I just remember like that was the conversation of the day. Maybe that's not accurate, but like, Shang Tsung throws 3 fireballs and just turns into other people. Still cool, but I believe that I remember reading that wasn't their original plan for Shang Tsung. He was gonna do a bunch more shit, and they're like, oh, we don't have enough time. Let's just have him morph into other characters.
He doesn't even look like he's part of the game when on his old form, like it just doesn't look like,
because he's floating and it's like kind of odd.
Yeah, his closing kind of doesn't match like the game's like style. But yeah, I would say for Mortal Kombat 1 and 2, Goro and Kintaro were definitely the harder fights for sure. Everything else, like after that, like even Shao Kahn the first time, like all you had to do was just jump kick and he just blocks it and he doesn't punish you. Like Kintaro, if you jump kick him and he blocks it, he actually punishes you for doing that most of the time. So it was just comes down to it. Sometimes the sub bosses could be harder than the last boss, and I would say that's kind of a bummer too.
What you were mentioning, Matt, of how which bosses really stand out, and there is a series to me that absolutely does, because their boss fights are relatively unique, and I don't think it was emulated, or I mean, it was obviously emulated later on in other games in the future, but it sort of started this, and it begins with Apocalypse in X-Men vs. Street Fighter.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. I love the giant bosses in the Versus series after
those are good.
After Marvel Superheroes, because Marvel Superheroes was just like Doom and Thanos, and Children of the Atom was just like Magneto. For the most part,
Magneto was tough though. That one was a good fight.
Yeah, it's actually a very fun fight. But the giant bosses, and here the caveat is none of them are super hard, right? Unless you mock
them. They're intimidating.
Yeah, they're intimidating because they're huge and big and crazy. Like, what do I even do against this type stuff? But yeah, Apocalypse and even actually, you know what? I just realized Marvel Superheroes technically is Cyber Akuma. That's a bit different.
True.
But Onslaught, Abyss.
Yeah. Oh boy.
To a lesser extent to Galactus, and even one that is pretty damn fun, which is Ultron Sigma. Like, all these fights are actually really awesome and crazy fun.
Damn, Max, you left out that one boss that no one cares about, Mr. Abyss himself.
I said Abyss.
Oh, did you?
I didn't hear
for
it.
some reason, I was like, oh yeah, all those bosses are cool, but this really sucked actually. Marvel's Capcom 2 might be one of the greatest fighting games of all time, but that boss fight was trash.
The weirdest thing is that progressively they get easier and easier and easier as time goes on.
Yeah, that's the worst part, especially if you have cable and you just beam the crap out of the red form, and I'm just like, yeah, that's unfortunate.
Remember the gimmick to Onslaught? You just pick Chun-Li and do forward HP and it stuns him to death. And it's like,
yes, the two-hit fireball.
Yeah, dang it, man. They just got easier and easier. And even Ultron Sigma is a really easy fight. Galactus is a stupid easy fight, even on the hardest difficulty type stuff. You have to like give it a chance to even let him see some moves. But those fights, I think, are just fighting game bliss type stuff. I love them. Cool.
Yeah, especially at the time because they were so... I want to say that they're so like not screen capturing, but they drew a crowd if people saw you were at the boss. Like it was, you didn't really see anything like that at the time, especially since most fighting game bosses up to that point were just like, human sized whatevers, because that was the limitation of sprites, I guess. They could draw them to be, but as the hardware, like a CPS2 and everything, they're like, oh, well, we can do a big gimmick boss. Yeah, only this part is technically animated and like his arms and like the torso is not really moving around or anything. So it's not too bad. But yeah, that hasn't really been replicated too often outside from like your example with Galactus.
I love Onslaught. The second form of Onslaught is the coolest thing ever. Like, especially in the loud ass arcade, and then he just comes out. It's just like, damn, that is a sick boss.
He's got a great voice too.
Yeah, the voice is great. The moves is great. Even though like he even calls assist. He calls out Sentinel too.
Yeah.
I thought that was great.
This is now turned into the Onslaught podcast.
But before we move on, what did you think about? So you mentioned X-Men Street Fighter Apocalypse. I mean, he was great. Like he was a pretty cool addition. But then when Marvel Super Street Fighter came out and they nerfed Apocalypse, were you upset about that? Were you upset about that nerf?
Stupid easy in the follow-up. I don't understand why, because he's even as a youngin, right? Like Apocalypse fight isn't that hard. It's just literally you hit him in the head.
Yeah,
and that's it. Like you just he goes off screen. Here comes a drill, right? Okay, I know what's going on, and you just jump over it. It's like the most like easiest, straightforward like tells ever. And for some reason, he becomes even easier in the next game. Like I think they make up for it for the fact that Cyber Akuma is a tough ass boss, right?
Yeah,
he is
that's true.
Genuinely like hard to sort of deal with because he just does so much damage and he acts like an SNK boss. He just waits for you to do shit. So I'm thinking that's the reason why they did that. He's like a sub boss now.
Yeah, that's true. And he has like that cheap ass homing arm missile move, like that just tracks everywhere.
Yeah, his rocket
I'm like,
punch.
bro. Yeah, he was a cool boss for sure.
I know two other giant bosses that are not like Capcom adjacent. The first one was at the end of like I know we did our poverty episode, but Mace the Dark Age had this gigantic dragon that you would only get his torso up because he was like kind of coming out of the floor of the stage. His name was Asmodeus, and he took up like 30% of the screen just by himself on his side. And when I played Mace the Dark Age like a year or two ago, I just couldn't beat him. I actually just ran out of credits at the time because this was like the home version I was playing. So I could not beat him, and people in the comments were like, yeah, it's actually just projectile spam for him. You just stay far away, you throw your projectile. I was a character that did not have a projectile, so that checks out, but Asmodeus as a kid, I could never really beat. He's just like a giant orange dragon.
Yeah.
And the other one was the end of Bloody Roar 4. The boss is simultaneously one of the coolest bosses in Bloody Roar, at least, and also one of the lamest. Because the sub-boss is just it's Karate Man.
Karate's his name?
No, but like if you said that was his name, you'd be like, yeah, that checks out. His name is like Ryoho. And he's just Karate Man, and he has a little girl as like his stand, and she turns into like a little nine-tailed fox thing. And you're like, what is this? This is a tandem duo that you're fighting. And you're like, wow, this is the lamest thing I've seen ever. And then you beat them in like, I think in a full match. And then like the little girl's like, I'm out. I'm peacing out. I'm gone. And then this guy turns into a giant purple dragon that has like, it turns into like a FromSoft boss. You have one round to beat him. And if you lose, it's game over.
This
instant.
is the
No,
shit that sucks. Yeah.
it sucks.
Yeah.
I've never beaten this boss ever because he's lame, and I don't even want to fight him. I suppose if I loaded up on an emulator and did a save state, fine, I could tough it out. But
you almost need that.
Yeah,
you do. Because you don't give enough time to learn what the boss is doing.
Yeah.
And in previous Bloody Roar games, like before it was Bloody Roar 3 and Primal Fury, and that was just not Uranus, Kronos. And it was a guy that turned into a penguin, and it was hilarious because he turns into a cute little penguin in like a rubber suit, and he's like meh, meh, meh. And it's kind of funny, kind of annoying. But if he powers up one more time, he turns into a phoenix man that looks like he's from heaven, and it's the super sickest form, but you rarely see it because you can beat him fairly easily. So going from that to like cool dragon guy, but you have one shot to beat him, and I'm sure there's some sort of exploit I don't know. But when Bloody Roar 4 was new, and I was already disappointed because it was Bloody Roar 4 and it's just a lamer game, but you get to that boss, and the game has stupid endings you really want to see. They're like the Japanese. They're like the Japanese equivalent to MK4 endings.
Yeah,
where it's just the character models doing stupid shit and saying stuff that makes no sense, and they're in-game models too. So it's even more special and really bad dubbing. So you want to see these real bad, but I could never beat Ryoho and Nana. That's their tag team name. But
one that really
lame.
stands out to me that I think is a hilarious and also like memeable and really like funny boss fight is have you guys ever beaten Tekken 4?
Tekken 4. I remember playing Tekken 4 in arcade, but I just don't remember who the boss is.
You don't remember who the
Tekken
boss
4.
Neither do I.
Yeah, okay, so I wish I could get a picture of it, but Tekken 4, you have this whole arcade mode going through the whole roster, and I think there's a sub boss, but you get to the last fight. It's the King of the Iron Fist tournament finale, and you're in this big octagon MMA ring, and Heihachi walks out with all these like sparks and stuff, and he's in a diaper.
Yes, I remember that.
He's in a fundoshi, and it's just like, what the hell? Do you see his cheeks and all? And he just slowly walks up, and he's like, I'm your final opponent. I was like, wow, the last boss of Tekken 4 is Heihachi in a diaper. Okay, this is great.
That's actually kind of disappointing, I guess, when you think about like all the other Tekken bosses. From
unknown,
Ogre,
Jinpachi,
the Ogre,
Azrael.
Yeah, like, and then you get Heihachi as in a diaper.
Yeah,
I remember Jinpachi being super tough. Like until you start learning, just like because he's the first Tekken character, or maybe one of the first, maybe someone else did that actually had like projectiles. Fireballs, and it was just a matter of eventually like find like 2 or 3 really good moves and circle strafe around them or whatever and getting close. But I remember initially though, when I first got Tekken 5, I was like, oof, this is a tough boss fight, but it wasn't. You can get used to it. But Jinpachi was also a bit of Tekken. Stay with me on this. Tekken jumping the shark. I'm like, who is this guy now? You can't tell me that there's older relatives. They're just showing up like, I live, bitch.
I'm the great grandfather. I came out, it's kind of one of those things where, like what happened? He got like unlocked, not unlocked. I don't even know what's the proper word, but like pretty much unleashed. Like he was like in stone,
like a ghost
or like
something like that.
Yeah, like he was like in a tomb or a stone or a coffin, and then something happened where he just came out and like they released him from his grave.
He burst out of his coffin.
I don't know. He was sick looking, but then when you listen to the story, I'm like, bro, it's always the families. It's always family trouble in the Mishima
drama.
Always family drama when it comes down to it.
Oh, this guy's related to Heihachi, so his hair has to be inversed, where it's like his beard, but he's bald, so he doesn't like. Oh my god! Whenever I think about Jinpachi, I'm like, just they're designed for him. And I'm just like, wow. There's a reason why this character never reappeared ever again. Like not even Tekken Tag 2. That was literally everyone is here, but not Jinpachi though.
It was like a one-time thing. I think maybe they were just like, you know what, we can't we have to come back from Tekken 4 Heihachi boss, so we got to do something. let's make a new character and be like, this is the great grandfather of everyone, and then call him Jinpachi, and then we should be good.
Yeah. I looked up a boss that I personally did not ever get close. I was with a friend and we were trying to beat this back in the 90s. At the end of Eternal Champions, you try to beat the Eternal Champion. And this might be unique. You have to defeat him in 5 consecutive rounds.
What the hell?
That is the rule.
Rounds, not even 2 rounds. It's 5.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that's like a default like setting or whatever, but like that's what I was reading. And Eternal Champions works that you can't spam the same special moves because it eats up a chi bar. This boss does not, of course, abide by that rule. They can do whatever special moves they want at any time. And I don't think they were playable in that version of the game. They might have been. I do know that they're playable in the Sega CD version, but I read that and I was like, okay, 5. I've never heard that before for any other boss. 5 rounds. Like, and he needs to defeat you in like 2.
Of course.
Like how is that fair, Eternal Champion?
I mean, why not? He's eternal.
I guess. But it's like, that's the point of Eternal Champions. You defeat the Eternal Champion, you get your second shot at life. Because he'll pluck these characters right in the middle of them dying for various reasons. And I was like, no, put me back in the dying thing. I don't want to fight you for 5 consecutive rounds. It's too much.
Did you guys go ahead, Justin?
I was like another boss. I think that was like really hard growing up as a kid was probably Killer Instinct 1.
Oh, Idol.
Oh, Killer Instinct 1 and 2, Idol and Gargos, bro. I hated them.
They're super cheap.
Yeah, the fact that like they combo break you and they take mad damage from the combo breaker and they heal you combo breaker. I was like, no, there's no way I could beat this boss. They heal so fast.
Yeah, they're cheap. I still like I'm on the rope whether or not old Gargos and old Idol are great for like ending fighting game bosses, like in general, not just from gameplay but just from like a visual standpoint. Idol is definitely like an out there sort of thing. I think the closest thing he lines up to is Spinal. Technically it's like a Ray Harryhausen character. It's like back there. And Gargos is just, I think Gargos is the one that definitely is out there the most if you look at just KI2 alone, where the weirdest thing in the game is obviously Spinal and Glacius, but everyone else is like, I'm Raver Girl, I'm a ninja guy, there's a robot, and now there's like ancient demon gargoyle. Like I always thought KI bosses were like interesting and out there, like just almost a smidgen too much.
Yeah, I don't like Idol. I was kind of like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, visually, like his design is a little dated. But Gargos at the time, I was like, Gargos is an awesome name. But you look at his design, and he's just like, he looks like a jobber creature in a Castlevania game.
Yeah.
Like
that's true.
He doesn't look that special. Fortunately, his stage and his music are like amazing. It's just, they somehow got like 5-year-old little V Mills shredding on a guitar. And when you knock him off, like his knockoff animation for when he dies is like super sick. But when you actually look at him, he can float in the air, shoot a long stream of fire. I don't even remember what else he does. Like it's been a while since I fought him because I mostly fought him on KI Gold on the N64 because KI2 in my local arcade, and at least someone comes by every so often and gives KI2 a chance. So I didn't get to see Gargos too often in that, but like even KI 2013, like their designs are so much better and more interesting. Like Gargos looks like a boss, like a world-ending old one, or something. And Idol, while KI, hardcore fans are like, he doesn't actually have 2 heads. It's just one head split in half. And I'm like, yeah, that's because that's awesome.
That's way better.
and a way more creative way to do that. And it controls half his moveset. I mean, that's so cool.
And anyway, even the players complain about Gargos in Killer Instinct, where it's like, even though Gargos, the version you fight in the game, is severely toned down from like the boss fight that he actually is, everyone always complains that Gargos is like fighting a boss character, because he really is, man. Like the way he plays, and that was the design behind him. When I remember hearing Keats and other designers talk about him, we're like, we want to make a boss character like legal in game and actually playable. Like that's the goal. He needs to be like balanced to the point where, you know, he's beatable, but you need to feel powerful as shit if you're going to be using Gargos and commanding Jerry and Larry to beat ass. Like it is. I think it's really true, man. Like you fight against Gargos or you use them, you feel like you're piloting and combating a boss without the boss setting.
Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. Just because, like, I think I want, obviously every year, Colin Breaker, they always love showcasing Killer Instinct, and I think that was the first time I seen like somebody in tournament play Gargos, and I was like, bro, this is the cheapest character I've ever seen in history. Like, he's like so annoying, you can't catch him. He's just like pissing people off. He throws out random supers and summons little minions, and they just like the guy with a little pitchfork walking at you and stuff like that, just That's stabbing Larry. You and then interrupting. And I'm like, bro, this is such a sick boss, like such a sick character. I was like, man, they did a great job with Gargos when I first saw him.
He's a huge skill check, like a knowledge check character, right? Because there's so many gimmicks about him. Like Larry, the blue guy, can take 2 hits and then he's gone. Jerry, the little fat guy, can take 3 hits, but he's not like as aggressive. He's a bit more defensive. Like if you don't know these things and these really specific direct counters, it's a nightmare. It's like I never get to touch them. This guy just always gets to punch me from a mile away for some reason and then zoop out, and now he's covered in stone. And now I can't do anything
God, the
to him
stone,
at all.
yeah.
Oh, that's the
stone.
That's the super armor, right? What is that's
it's ultra armor. Like it's beyond super armor.
Okay, that's I mean that's kind of cool though. I like that a lot.
I mean, since we're mentioning him, just that Shadow. What was it called? Shadow Wars, the season 3 story mode equivalent.
God.
Shadow Lords. Lords.
Yes. I literally
Justin,
worked on it and I forgot about the name.
Well, it's been a while since Microsoft has done anything with Killer Instinct. They should get a hashtag trending for that. Anyway, Justin, did you ever play through that mode where all it is gaining buffs to eventually fight Gargos, because his fight is going to be so tough and unfair that you have to spend at least like 2-3 hours gaining really good buffs in the hope that you get stuff good enough to fight and beat him.
No, I actually have never played that version.
Oh, you should try that.
Yeah, the last time I played KI was probably like middle of season 2.
Okay.
That was the last time I like played KI. So the fact that you're mentioning that, like, okay, like you have to like level your character up to like beat this character, it just sounds like it sounds pretty fun, actually. Like a lot of fun.
It is sort of like a roguelite mode in a way, where you're killing things, and then after a boss fight that has a fight that has a story, a chest drops and you get stuff that's like consumables, or you get these little like mags/pets that buff you, that like either give you more meter or prevent you from being counter broken and stuff like that. And you use all these things up until the end against like Gargos, right? You use some sparingly up until the final boss fight. My only issue with Shadow Lords is like, in theory, it's really cool and it is a fun mode, but it takes some getting used to, right?
Yeah.
Like the presentation and the UI and the interface of like what you need to be doing and how you need to be doing it is kind of like daunting. It's like, whoa, okay, so what's
a lot of text.
There's a lot of things that are all over the place that you have to keep. And I just want to, like, I think it would have been easier if you just fought and then leveled up stats. Like just make my uppercut really, really busted. Like make it more damaging than anything. And I'll just cram points into like an uppercut. It's not like that. You have to get like, you get these consumables and mags, and then I think you feed them, sort of.
Yeah.
I can't remember, but there's
it's a little complicated, it seems like, huh?
It's a little complicated. Yeah. It's a very in-depth mode.
While I appreciate them putting like flavor text on a lot of stuff and giving like, after you defeated TJ Combo, you then searched TJ Combo's car and he had like this stand that helps buff your like, and you're like, hey, you didn't need that. But like, the main thing I forgot about until we just started speaking about it again Max knows this, but Justin, there's a countdown clock. Gargos is coming on this day.
Ooh.
And you have to buff yourself sufficiently before the end of that happens. And if you lose a match, it's like you lose some things. Like there's a penalty for losing a match, or you'll get like less good loot. And all this is, and like when I talk about this, I get excited about this mode again. And there's even a reason to do it, because you unlock like Gargos' stage. You can't get this stage any other way, and you also can't even try to beat this on easy. It has to be like, I think medium or higher, or might be hard.
Yeah, they make you play it on the harder difficulties to actually get the good unlock.
Ooh, yeah, that's kind of that's kind of cool. It's kind of like an old school puzzle fighter where if you pick easy, you only get 3 stages compared to normal and hard.
The old school easy modes in most games, including fighting games, was like you just get access to half the game. Come back later when you turn it on medium.
And now that I'm thinking about this, all 3 seasons of KI were like the Shadow Jago, the special version of Shadow Jago is like the ultimate boss you can fight eventually. And then in season 2 is Arya. Yeah, she was selectable from the start when she was added to the game, but she didn't really get a special version. It was just, she didn't do anything special, right?
I don't think that we weren't really given any specific things to do with the single player, the story mode for season 2. That was because at the end of season 2, Arya is like your final boss character in many ways.
Yeah,
but it's more like rivals. Right, it's an acclamation of like if you get to the end of this, obviously TJ Combo at the end should fight the head of Ultra Tech, Orchid should also be doing something fairly similar, and that was the focus of those bosses, like how you're going to build up to those. So there was, and since it was relatively low budget, we didn't get like the ability to like get programmers or guys that could script completely new things into those fights and stuff like that. I think they're relatively normal.
Yeah, but thankfully it's like Arya being the head of Ultra Tech and like a new character. You're like, okay, well, this is a boss.
There's something.
And then for season 3, it was all about Gargos. Like, Gargos is coming. It's like you have 7 days. You have like a week. Steal a bunch of stuff to buff him, because all the heroes of KI were all like, we got to work together. This dude is coming. It's very like Marvel. It's very like Thanos is showing up and he's just going to body everybody. So it's a really cool mode in theory that I would like to see. Like we're talking about the boss rush mode in KOF 15. I'd like them to go even a bit further than that. Like, make the bosses even tougher, but maybe you can gain like a buff or 2 or something during the thing. But I think it's too late for that now.
Yeah, like the option to play it at the hardest difficulty is there. And that's the thing with Gargos, is that you can skip all of the days and just go straight to the fight.
True.
And then if you want to try the fight, like it is fucking ridiculously hard. And the crazy thing about KI is that combo breakers exist, right?
Yep.
So as soon as you touch some of these bosses, they destroy you. They immediately like break your shit, and that's where I think a lot of those consumables and buffs that you get can actually counter it. Where that's the idea, but that's awesome. Like you just skip the 7 days, the week that you have to build up towards, and you can fight the really hard version if you want.
Yeah, I think that was like kind of the risk reward system towards the end. They're like, do I really like? I've been at this for like 3 or 4 hours, and like one, I just skipped the last 2 days. Like maybe I have a shot. Maybe you got really good stuff, and you know all the buffs and items and like potions. You can even craft. I think
there's crafting.
It was crazy.
So here's the weird. I just recently looked at this, so I have like a little bit of recent perspective because it's been like 6 years. The mode is just straight up like a mobile game mode in many ways. Like you could buy packs, you can spend real money to buy the in-game currency to unlock like the consumables specifically for that game mode and stuff like that, or you can just earn things naturally as you fight and stuff like that. There's literally like, I don't want to have to go grind on these matches to go earn these consumables. I'm just going to spend $10 and get all this stuff, right?
Ooh, it
is actually, well, it's more like pay for your time, right? If you don't
pay for a chance,
pay just to like avoid doing all like some of the grinding. So that's all there, right? It has this entire currency. I almost forgot about this when I first played it. So the mode is relatively in depth. Like in my opinion, they put way too much into it. Like overall, where it gets like kind of confusing at this point of like, what do I need to do? Where do I need to go? Like, I just kind of want to fight and then get rewards for things and then use rewards. But there's a lot of systems on top of subsystems.
Yeah,
Man,
but it was crazy that they added that.
Yeah, you got me interested in trying this mode now, especially.
Good.
I want to try out the mode where I just skip the 7 days and see how hard he really is. I want to really see that.
Is that doable, Max? Have you seen that happen? Have you had players tell you like, "Oh, I was able to do that"? Like,
so I don't think it was at the start, but the mode got changed, right? Granted, this is the mode I literally worked on, but I was the cinematics guy, so I wasn't like debugging it or anything or like testing it. So I never, I think I beat Shadow Lords once on a like medium difficulty when it first came out, but there's like several difficulties that get really difficult, like really hard. And you can still do the skip on those. So I wish I could tell you, but I actually don't know.
I want Justin to do this.
There's definitely some people that I think it's absolutely possible to do it, but it really depends on which difficulty you choose, because that has a huge impact on how hard this is.
All right, we got to get the Nikki FGC, the best possible Killer Instinct player in the world, to try that mode. See what's harder, winning a tournament or beating this mode without any like consumables.
Buffs. Yeah, like it's been, like you said, it's been 5 years. Someone has to have done it. Like the KI fan base is at least big enough for that someone be like, I can do this, no problem. But I never looked it up. Now I'm very intrigued. Probably going to do that.
I mean, I do agree with you that I think like, because I would say the KI community in general is just like super hardcore into it. They know everything about it. They're not just like fighting game players. They're like Killer Instinct loyalists. Yeah. I feel like they would try that eventually. Is like, hey, you know what? Let me see how hard it is without these consumables and like, you know, these buffs and stuff.
Yeah, but it's just the general. Like the general just shows up when you try this. Like Gargos gets like Shungoku Satsu'd.
He might be number
general.
1, bro.
By the way, can we talk about like epic boss fight like isms? I can't even tell you how much I love CVS2's bosses. Because
they're like, it's like your favorite, I think, or it's up there, right?
Probably one of my favorite Capcom like lead ups and bosses is what they do with, you know, Rugal, or specifically like God Rugal and, you know, God Akuma type, Shin Akuma type shit. I absolutely love where God Rugal has murdered Akuma. He's holding his body and he just throws it away to like kill you. I'm like, this is so fucking cool. Like a 5-year-old. Oh my God.
No, that I thought that was fantastic as well. And even when you played them, like the playable version, like Dreamcast, and then you play them as bosses, you feel their power. That's the best part. They had the craziest combos, the craziest like conversions. Like everything was just completely broken and not like meant to be played against like actual humans. But man, I remember I felt bad because I played one of my friends as ratio for Shin Akuma, and he just threw a fireball, this lonely fireball from full screen. I had level 3, and I just came down from the sky and just chopped them, and all you see is KO, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I am so sorry that this is
from
possible.
Full screen.
I think we've bossed each other around enough for today, unless there's a final closing thought on bosses and stuff. But I think we almost like kind of buried our lead by saying nowadays it's like it happens very rarely. But it would be cool if we did this, the balance of having a boss that's playable, because like Max pointed out, fighting games much more expensive to make nowadays, but have a more powered up version for when you're doing the arcade ladder or story mode.
Yeah, I think it's like what makes the allure of boss fights is always an interesting conversation. And for me, it's always to see like the hardest difficulty of a boss and what the AI is going to do to cheese you out of something. And every single time, the older fighting games especially, they never disappoint. There's always some ridiculous thing, and that's kind of like what makes boss fights, especially classic ones, super special to me.
Yeah, I would say same, like literally what Max said. And I think the one thing is like Bro, if Dark Soul games are acceptable and loved by a lot of players and people love seeing that, why can't fighting games bosses be the same? I miss that. I still love playing old school fighting games just because I hear the bosses are insane. Like I love reading comments from people saying, hey, you need to try this game and fight this boss because you don't know what you missing out, blah blah blah. And I'm like, all right, man, I'll let me see. And so I always love to see that surprise.
Justin, go ahead, Matt.
I was gonna say you say you love it, but like half of your thumbnails are you crying when you're fighting these bosses.
Oh my! I mean, there has been some major tragic moments when I'm fighting these bosses for sure. But the feeling of like beating it and getting it done, and then it's just it's a great feeling.
That proposes the great question. Fighting game devs, we are waiting for the Dark Souls of fighting games. Let us have it. We're ready,
bro. Yeah, let stage 1 AI read your inputs right away, and then make sure like everyone just suffers. I would love to see kind of that situation happen.
Yeah, we want more suffering. Listen to us. We know what we're talking about.
I think Capcom does a great job when they're adding like collaboration characters.
I've never been able to extend this way.
Oh god, I gotta get the helmet on. Oh god. Wait a minute, our guy's a bad guy the whole time.
I just think it's crazy that I'm better at video games now than when I was like 16.
That is how you fix all the problems with all these games.
I feel like toy distribution is so different than it used to be.
They resculpted over the chest. They gave him a flak jacket over it.
I laugh when I see Among Us, but I'm not having fun inside. It's a reflex.
No, you took my joke!